Well, hello. Happy Wednesday, ladies and gentlemen, guys and gals, and our non gendered pals. Welcome to another exciting episode of Witch's Movie Coven. We are, of course, in October, and no October is complete without a visit from the giant pumpkin himself, Dr. Frankenfurter of the Rocky Horror Picture Show. And that's what we're doing. And I am one of your hosts tonight. Ms. Patty Negri is flying around the moon somewhere on her broom. She is, of course, the hardest working witch in all of Hollywood. And with that, I am one of your hosts, Richard-Lael. Richard-Lael is one name. If I were just Richard, I would be a but enough about me. I am actually going to let all of my friends introduce themselves. Well, after I toss it over here to Miss Heather Greene. Heather Greene, hello, welcome.
Hi, I am Heather Greene and one of the Transylvanians tonight for our great Coven meeting. And I am the author of Lights, Camera, Witchcraft, the critical history of witches and witchcraft in American cinema and television. I am an editor at Llewellyn, and I work with wonderful witchcraft authors, some of which are part of our coven. And I also am a journalist covering all things occult in the media. So I am so excited to be here tonight.
That is so lovely, Miss Heather Greene. But I have a question to ask of you before we move
Sure.
on. Have you any tattoos, Heather?
I'm sorry, doctor.
Yeah.
I do not.
Well, how about you, Courtney?
Oh, I have quite a few. Thank you.
Er,
I'm Courtney Buckley, Ghost Maid on Scared and Alone, Salem Witch, and resident Rocky Horror Picture Show virgin. Do with that what you will. I know.
Ooh.
It's so scandalous. So stay tuned for my thoughts tonight.
And from Miss Courtney Buckley, we go over to Rocky himself. Oh, Rocky, blonde hair and, well, just blonde hair.
I am speechless right now that Courtney is a Rocky virgin. I am Jason, author of 10 Llewellyn books. There's so many I can barely get them all on screen. It's so good to be here. This is like a movie it feels like we should have talked about in our third show, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's not really a witch in it, but it is about
It's-
witchcraft, I like
But
to say.
yes, exactly.
With that, we are talking about, for those of you who have not seen it, we are talking about the cult classic film Rocky Horror Picture Show. And normally Patty would toss that right over to me. And so since she's not here, I'll toss it right over to me. I'm a really good catcher. Anyway, I know what you were saying, what you're thinking there, Miss Courtney. Okay, Rocky Horror Picture Show. For those of you who have not seen the show, it is a cult classic about a young couple who are so pure and chaste, and then on the way after a wedding that they've gone to, they find themselves in a little bit of car trouble. And I would like, if I may, to take you on a strange journey. You see, the older I get, the more I am, that man has no effing chin. Neck. That man has no effing neck. Anyway, so the story is told from the perspective of a caseworker who has sort of been talking about the strange comings and goings of one Dr. Frankenfurter. He's a hot dog, by the way. Brad and Janet leave their confines of their car and they come upon a terrifying castle. And of course, it is inhabited by all manner of fiends and ghouls. They are met by the incomparable butler. Oh God, why can't I not remember his name? It doesn't matter. I'm such a fan and I forgot the name.
Riff Raff.
Riff Raff.
Riff Raff.
Thank you so much. I feel like the worst fan now. They come across Riff Raff, and Riff Raff, of course, welcomes them into the castle, where they are then ushered into a room where they are focused on these Transylvanians, which are they aliens? Are they witches? Are they a coven? Who knows? But they are gathered, they're foreigners with strange ways, not like our own, doing some kind of folk dancing. When they sort of feel like they need to back out of the room from this time warp that they have found themselves in, down the elevator comes the beautiful and incomparable Dr. Frankenfurter. He then, of course, tells them that it will be all right by the light of the night, because he'll get them a satanic mechanic. Don't get strung out by the way he looks. Don't judge a book by its cover. He's not much of a man by the light of day, but by night he's one hell of a lover. Yes, he is transvestite. That sweet transvestite. That was me a few years ago when I played Frank. That was before all of this. Anyway, so in the confines of the story, all of these strange things began to happen. You find that Dr. Frankenfurter has created a man, a la Frankenstein, excepting for he's a man with blonde hair and a tan, and he's good for relieving his tension. So Brad and Janet are, of course, invited, along with the Transylvanians, to see this creation, that spark of life itself. And then everything goes awry. Everything goes awry. Rocky is, he's new to this world. And then Frank ends up by murdering Meatloaf. And he's got...
Saddest part of the film.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I like the part where they're having dinner and he says, well, he doesn't say it, but it's implied. Meatloaf, anyone? Anyway, so that's kind of the fun part for me. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The doctor, there's another doctor who comes in, Dr. Scott, who has been investigating all of these strange comings and goings. And you find out that Eddie, Meatloaf, is the boyfriend of one of the girls who is in the castle and one of the Transylvanians, or not. And then Frank has an affair with Brad and Janet, and Rocky has an affair with Janet. And then you find out that they're aliens from another planet, and Riff Raff comes in to sing a song, Frankenfurter, it's all over. Meanwhile, Rocky, the creation, catches the body of the now deceased and fallen Dr. Frankenfurter and carries him up the RKO radio tower a la King Kong. And then, of course, in the end, they're all the castle sort of flies back into outer space, and crawling on the planet's face are some insects known as the human race. That's sort of where it ends. If you want more, you'll have to come back and watch Shock Treatment. I don't really recommend that. Anyway, if you have not known what Rocky Horror was, you can go watch that film at your own leisure. You thought I was going to say something else, but I was not. Heather Greene, you are definitely a scientist in all of this. You are definitely the one who has been investigating all of these strange comings and going. And I bet, my dear, that you have some fascinating things to tell us.
I do, but I have to put on glasses that I can actually see out of to read. So hang on one second. Let me switch. So, oh my goodness. Wow. Daylight. So yeah. So first of all, I do have some facts. I'm going to give you some 5 things to know, although there's probably thousands of things to know. But actually, I'm going to start with saying this movie is meant to be with performances. So if you just watch it on your screen and have never seen it before, you're probably going to be like, what is this? Because this is more than just watching a movie. But we'll get to that in a second. So number 1, context and history, just like I always like to start. Then number 2, the rebirth of this movie, and we'll get into that. Then the cast, we can't skip that, and then we're gonna talk about what kind of themes are rolling through this and what this movie's really about. and then discuss cult films. I have some interesting things I wanted to bring up to give you guys something to think about. So first, let's talk about the movie. Do you guys know it's almost 50 years old? It's going to be 50 years old next year. So expect to see a lot of Rocky Horror stuff next year. It was released as a movie in 1975, but before that, it was actually a stage play. It started in London, went to the West End, and then came to LA. That's where you had Meatloaf was two of the characters in the LA version, and some of the people in the film were actually in the original London cast as well. So I'll get to that in a second. So that's how it started. And then they said when it came to LA, oh, let's make a movie out of it. So in 1975, the film was released. It was a bomb. It actually was pulled out of theaters. It was so bad. And it wasn't even released into that many theaters. It was not successful whatsoever. So that's sort of the basis of it. Now, just to point out, the director, one of the writers of the film is actually played Riff Raff, both in the stage play and also in the movie. So we'll get to him in a second. So that's how it kind of started, right? Then what happens is after it bombs as a movie, we're going to number 2, it's Rebirth. The Waverly decides to play this in New York City. The Waverly plays this film, and it is popular. People come. And from that 1976 viewing in the Waverly in New York, we start to see it pick up and start getting played at midnight on Fridays particularly, and people are going to see this, and it's getting its stage play back. And if you haven't seen it in the theaters, there are people usually dressed in costume acting out the roles alongside the film around the theater. People scream out at it. It becomes an event. It's not just a regular movie, and that picks up steam, and it's been doing that ever since. In fact, it is considered, hang on one second, it has the award for the longest running movie release of all time. This movie was released and has never stopped playing in theaters since 1975. Maybe a short run between the time 76 and 75. I don't know. But it's been played since 1976 in theaters, which is absolutely incredible. And so we're going to get to a little bit more about the Waverly. I want to talk about that in a minute and why it was the Waverly and why that's important, because that is important. Primarily because the Waverly Theater, if you don't know where it is, it's in the Village. And when in New York City, and you guys call Greenwich Village, if you're not from there, the West Village. If you're from New York City, you just call it the Village. And the Village was, during this period of time, very progressive. This is where a lot of the movements were taking place during the 60s and 70s. Very artistic. This is where NYU's campus is. So there's a lot of students there. And it still is to an extent very, very progressive and artsy and that type of population and live in that area. But at that time, this was the 70s. This was a progressive movement, lots of movements, and LGBT community was coming out. You had feminist movements, you had civil rights movements. All this stuff was happening in and around. So when the movie is released in the Waverly, it hits its point. It hits its community. It hits where it needs to hit for it to be popular, and people loved it. It was perfect setting for a movie like this to be released, rather than just generically to the general population. And it was such a creative area, so of course people would run with it and do what they did with it. Now let's get to the cast before we get more into that. So the cast is filled with people that you would recognize, primarily some from outside and some from this film. Let's talk Tim Curry first, who we have with us here tonight. Do you mind?
He's so delicious.
So he's an icon all himself. He was in the original stage play in London. He is also known for Legend. If you saw him there, he is Darkness from 1985. He was in the Clue movie in 85. He has also been in a lot of stage plays and won a Tony Award, and several Tony Awards, actually. He was Gomez at one point. He was in The Hunt for Red October, if you want to see something a little different. And of course, For us musical fans, he was Rooster in the Annie movie. So he is very versatile and has been all over the place. You can find him.
Also, one of my favorite roles, if I may interrupt,
Sure.
General Mortars. He was General Mortars in that Naked Gun, I think.
Oh, was he
The
really?
Weird Us Guys.
And then our producers are saying Pennywise. There's so many places I could list, like lots of places where he shows up, and he's so versatile. Sometimes you go, oh wow, that's the same guy who played Dr. Frankenfurter. It's crazy. So now we'll go to Susan Sarandon, another one of the more recognizable characters. She is a super young Susan Sarandon here. Witchy people will know her from The Witches of Eastwick, of course, also known for Thelma and Louise. If you're a fan of baseball movies, she was in Bull Durham. More recently, The Lovely Bones, The Client, and a whole host of films. She was pretty much a mainstay in the 80s and 90s, at least. So those are some Susan Sarandon movies. We also have Meatloaf, another regular. And Meatloaf, of course, passed in 2022. He is probably best known for his music. Of course, Paradise by the Dashboard Light is a mainstay of lots of people's playlists. He was also, he was in the original cast in LA, as I said, and he actually was in a lot of stage plays. He had a phenomenal singing voice. He was in the cast of Hair back at that time. So he's probably best known for his music, but of course here too, and he's done a bunch of stuff. Then you have Richard O'Brien, who is Riff Raff. He is the writer of this. This is what he is known for, but I found interesting, he was also a character. He played in Flash Gordon movie that we reviewed here. He was FICO. He was in the Dungeons and Dragons movie, and he's Phineas and Ferb's daddy, which I thought was hysterical. I don't know if anyone knows who Phineas and Ferb is, but if you don't,
oh, of course,
he's the voice of their father.
Bowling for Soup does their theme song. I love Phineas and Ferb.
Phineas and Ferb is a great cartoon.
And he was in Elvira's Haunted Hills.
So we also have a few others to mention. There's Barry Bostwick. He plays Brad, and he's pretty much known for this. Charles Gray, who's in tons and tons of movies. Diamonds Are Forever is what he's best known for. And then two other actresses who played Magenta and Columbia, both were in the original cast in London. They are best known for this as well, although they have done other things. So that's sort of the cast. Let's just roll that out. But I want to get back to what this movie is about. So this movie is about really a tribute to science fiction movies of the mid-century, to horror schlock movies and B movies. It's really a tribute to all of that, is one of the layers of it. If you don't know what schlock is, a B horror movie is Roger Corman from the 50s. A schlock movie is, and I brought this book out, a schlock movie is like what Larry Buchanan would make. He was called, this is Tales of a Cinema Schlockmeister. Larry Buchanan was a schlockmeister. He made a movie called Naked Witch. If you want to see some real witchy horror schlock movies, go see Naked Witch. And it's, yeah, the Jason does it all. Have you seen it, Jason?
Next Halloween, baby. Naked Witch time.
Have you seen Naked Witch?
Take your shirt off.
No, I've never seen it.
Oh my goodness. It is definitely, we'll have a discussion about that as another Witches movie Coven. So yeah, it's not what would they call a nudie. This is a schlock horror. It's different, but either way, we'll move on from that. So this movie is a tribute to all of it. And I wrote down actually really where, if I can find it, hang on a second, all of the different movies. It's so exciting because if you like science fiction, darn, what happened to my sheet of paper? Oh, here it is. If you just read the song itself, if you forget about the references in the whole movie, because or throughout, just the opening song, The Day the Earth Stood Still, Flash Gordon, there's Naked Witch, the Invisible Man, King Kong, It Came from Outer Space, Dr. X, Forbidden Planet. These are movies from the 30s, 40s, and 50s, science fiction and horror. When the Worlds Collide.
Ouch.
Tarantula, The Day of the Triffids, Night of the Demon, These are all movies that were just mentioned in that original song. Then you have references to Frankenstein, you have Hitchcock references. The people that wrote this movie watched movies. And this was this sort of fun tribute to the movie. If this was redone today, I think that The Killing Tree would be mentioned, because that's the kind of movie that they are enjoying. It's movies that are so bad that they're good, that they're fun to watch.
It's always good to get the Courtney audience. It's very important that you get the Courtney audience.
But really, when I was doing some research on this movie and what they were doing, that is the exact movie, that the kind of movies that are just, that's a schlock movie, that's a schlock horror, and it's just really, you get that kind of comedy going, even though it wasn't intentional necessarily. So that's what this movie is really about. It's this tribute to these old movies, and the guys knew what they were doing, because you see it throughout, and we can talk about that if we want more. And then finally, my last thing, and before I let somebody else talk, is the cult aspect of this. And I think this is really interesting, and I want to bring this up, and I want you to think about this. So as I mentioned, this was played at the Waverly, and it became a film that that became a space for people who didn't fit in to go and enjoy themselves. It became a space that Friday night at midnight, I could go in this space and just be who I want. I could just let it loose. I can enjoy this show. I can be an actor in the show. I'm entering a time warp to be in a place where I'm accepted for who I am. It's very much has that vibe. And that's very much at the time, and still to this day, it allows for that. That's what it allows for. That's what the castle is that space, right? That's why it was so popular back in the 70s. And you're talking about all the weirdos, and it's also a space where you see, and I think Richard-Lael brought this up, where the two normal people go in, and when they go into that castle, the normal people become the weirdos, and the weirdos are the normal people. It reverses it, so you wind up with all these people who don't fit in normal society every day in their lives, go into this space here, and now they're normal in who they are. And it gives them a place to watch this movie where they can imagine a world that they can live in, where they aren't considered weird, where they aren't considered aberrant, where they aren't considered a problem in society. So it allows that, right? So that's sort of one of the reasons why this movie became a cult movie, because it gave the safe space to people to enjoy, if not for an hour or two, right? Now I want you to take a note. Why is The Wicker Man popular with the pagan community? It's the same thing. The Wicker Man, for all the things that it is and isn't, gives pagans in the space where they can imagine a world where witchcraft and paganism is normal, and then the normal person who comes in from the outside is the aberrant one, is the problem. So Wicker Man also is a cult film. Okay, this is the ultimate cult film, I would argue, but you have a similar thing. This is why films become cult, because they give people watching it the opportunity to be in a space they can't be in, and they enjoy it. So does that make sense? I think that's super interesting as that connection, and it's one of the reasons films become cults. And that is it. We can talk about I didn't talk about the castle, but we can talk about the castle because it's a really popular film place. There's been like 200 films there at the castle, but I didn't mention that. We can do that later. Somebody else can talk now.
Who would like to go next?
It has to be Courtney. It has to be Courtney, because if you go to a live Rocky Horror Picture Show, they always bring the Rocky Virgins up before the movie starts.
That is a very good point.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I'll miss out on that forever, because I watched it in my living room. So
well, but still, you have.
Then you're still a Rocky Virgin. Then you're still a Rocky Virgin.
And when I see you, I will see you, and we will go to a Rocky Shadowcast, you and me, and they will drag you on stage, and they will draw a big red V on your forehead.
I've seen other things done that are way more involved than that.
Yes.
You know what? Rock on. I'll take the more involved. Here's the thing. I had the Time Warp on my playlist from like when I had the original iPod. So I'm not unfamiliar with this movie. I just had never watched it. And I think part of it was because I knew that they had done these midnight showings and people dressed up, and that always sounded so fun. So I was kind of holding out to be able to go do something like that. And I never did. And then the only other exposure I had to it was on Glee, because they did it.
It's great on Glee, though. That's good.
I think I'll get to that, but I'll bring Glee back up again. So I mean, I love every song in this movie. I love the soundtrack. It's so catchy and fun. I, in my life, have never taken acid before, and I feel like I don't need to now because that's what it felt like when I was watching it. I did struggle to follow along with any of it at all. I was here 1,000% for the representation. I loved that it was like all of, like, I felt at home in the castle where all the weirdos were. It was great. I just didn't, as soon as it was aliens, I was like, I can't finish watching this.
I forgot.
I did.
Forgot. They are aliens, Courtney.
But they came out in those, like, whatever, those weird suits, and they were like, we're taking over, get the transfer beam. And I was like, oh, okay.
It's all over.
Yeah, that was all of the other stuff I was here for, but that part crossed the line for me, and I just couldn't. That was it. I couldn't deal with it after that. So I did finish it. I did watch it. I watched the whole thing. I enjoyed all of the songs. I liked everything else about it. But as soon as it turned into aliens, I was like, I can't even. I can't do it. So I didn't mind it, Heather. I didn't mind it.
Well, I'm glad you didn't mind it.
Yeah, I would go see it. I would get dressed up. I would go to the thing. I would go see it again. I think I would not sit on my, I don't see a point in sitting on my couch and watching it again. But I would go for the experience.
Group. It is definitely more fun in a group.
Yes.
Yeah.
Though I still love it. I've seen it so many times. It's one of my favorite movies that I just like to just watch because it feels so good. Jason, what do you have to say?
You know, I have now some of this I'll do in the minute because I had a weird experience with Rocky when I was much younger, but I've seen it many times live, and you really have to see it live for the real experience to kick in. You have to throw the rice, you have to use the squirt guns, you have to yell slut at the right particular moments. You have to do all of those things to truly enjoy Rocky Horror. I remember when this movie used to run on VH1 at Halloween, basically in a continual loop back in the days when people paid for this mysterious thing called cable television. And it's just not the same. The songs are still great, but the movie doesn't hold up. You need that extra atmosphere to truly make this movie a great movie.
Roger Ebert agreed with you. He said back in the day the movie was terrible, but it really is a stage play. It should never been a movie, and that's exactly what happened to it. It went back to being a combo.
Absolutely,
it's so much better like that. It makes no sense just sitting there watching it with your popcorn on a Sunday afternoon.
Because you have to sing, you have to get up and dance, you have to, take that jump to the left and then a step to the right. You have to put your hands on your hips and pull your knees in tight and do the pelvic thrusts. There's no other way to watch this movie. You can't just sit there and watch the film. And you can't sit there on your couch and watch the film. If you aren't doing all of the things, you're really not participating in the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
I have to say, I was a virgin when I think I must have been about 21, and I had known about it. I grew up in the theater. I loved the music. I had known about it, but I was such a little Puritan, and a friend of mine invited me over to her house to watch the Rocky Horror Picture Show, and her brother comes out with no shirt on, and I was going, oh, why am I attracted to him? Oh, goodness. Oh, my goodness, little baby me trying to come to terms with who I was. And then Frank comes out and he's definitely, well, to quote Donald Trump, everyone was saying, wow. So and then they had me. My friend says to me, "Oh, take your shirt off. Take your shirt off." And I was like,
Clutch
So
those pearls, Richard-Lael.
it was such an awkward thing for me. But I grew up listening to the music. And then one day I was doing a show called Dream Sequins. It was kind of a musical throwback to the 70s. Sequins, like the shiny object and not sequence, but Dream Sequins. And we did sort of a menagerie of classic songs from the 70s. And in the meanwhile, I played a man, a woman, a man. And so I had to layer makeup and glasses and a mustache and all of these things. But I had this curly wig. And before they glued the mustache on me, they said, "Oh my God, you look like Dr. Frankenfurter." And I said, "Thank you so much." And they said, "And you sound like him too. Oh my God." But the funniest thing I have to say about the Rocky Horror Picture Show and a personal witchcraft for me is that I love the film. I love it. I watch it all the time, and I love the film. I put it on in the background. I just love it. Years ago, I used to, as you know, I was a Hollywood celebrity impersonator before I did all of the other television things. Well, some of it while I was doing. Mostly it was Willy Wonka. And then I needed a change, and I decided that I was going to be Dr. Frankenfurter. I was indeed. This was what I did.
Holy crap. So awesome.
That was me.
Wow.
And I was out working one day. And I skipped ahead. I had a dream. I had this dream that I was standing on a street corner dressed like that. And Tim Curry and I meet at this crossroads, and Tim comes up from the other direction, and I'm going in this direction. And Tim is wearing his black turtleneck, and he says, "That's nice." And I woke up. I thought, okay, that's funny. That's funny. Ha ha. I dreamt of Tim Curry. So I'm out working one day, and I'm wearing the corset, and I'm wearing the 9-inch heels, and I'm doing it. And it was a little bit chilly, so I had the jacket on from the he wears a leather jacket with all the patches and things. So my friend, who's Italian, she says to me, baby, oh my God, you have to come down. You have to come and see. Tim Curry is going to be at the Book of Soup or Soup of Books or whatever it is. He's going to be in West Hollywood. You have to come." I said, no. I'm not going to go dressed like this because he's going to hate it. And there's going to be hundreds of people. I don't want to deal with this. She says, baby, please, you must come. You must come. You must come, please. And her pleading made it so that I said, okay, you know what? I will go down to West Hollywood and see Tim Curry. And I got in my hearse and I marched across the street when I parked, and I in those giant heels and 10 feet tall with the hair and the whole thing. And I go in, and there's only like 10 people, and no one is in costume. Not a single person. None. And then Tim comes in. He's wheeled in his wheelchair, and he looks at me and he goes, "That's nice." The fact that I had dreamt it the night before, and then there it was exactly verbatim. So there is a little bit of a personal connection there. Tim Curry, 2017 Book Soup. Yep, I was at that event right there, 2017. And then the funny thing is that while Tim is in his chair, I was standing next to him, and I said, Tim, I just want to thank you. You are such a brilliant performer. You have inspired so many people, and you are so fabulous. And he says, "What a lovely thing to say." And then he reads my jacket and he says, "Evil 69. That's nice." But it was Tim, and it was really lovely that I got the chance to actually meet one of my childhood heroes.
That's beautiful.
Who wants to talk?
I think we need Heather's first experience seeing Rocky Horror.
I saw it in New York multiple times at midnight. Not at the Waverly, though. I don't know if it was playing at the Waverly when I was going. But in several times, I did see it in the Village once in a different theater, and I did see it in Midtown Manhattan at least once. I can't remember the others. So yeah, I saw it the first time when I was in college or high school. I can't remember when it was, and all through then when I was living in New York. I haven't seen it at midnight since then. Since I've been in Atlanta, they're actually playing it this Friday night at the local theater over here that's doing a showing, so that's going to be there. We're not going to be able to go, but I would go again. And I've seen it a few times on the screen on the TV watching it, but I'm not compelled. I love the music. I'll listen to the music, not at all compelled to watch it on the TV, because it's fun. If I see it once every 10 years, that's fine. I'll listen to the music constantly, because for me, it's not the movie. I like the spectacle of it all. So I would much rather just hold out and wait to see it at midnight somewhere, or if I had a bunch of friends in a room, and we were all going to watch it on the TV, then it would be super fun. But just to sit down on a Sunday, like I said, to watch it, that's not what I'm going to do. I'd rather just put the music on. I'm with you guys on that one. So, because I love the music, and I'm going to tell you, every single pagan event I go to that has a DJ plays the time warp, and anybody in the vicinity gets out on that dance floor. So
especially at a wedding, that's the best.
Weddings, I've heard it at weddings, yes.
But I really love them when they're played at funerals. It's the best.
That I have not yet seen, Richard-Lael. So I think
I didn't mean to interrupt, but I will tell you, years ago, I did go to a funeral where Meatloaf was played as the exit song, and it was I'm not kidding. It was Bad Out of Hell.
That's bizarre.
That's not the worst song to go out to, though.
It was a weird thing. And then the hearse was speeding down the highway. Like the hearse was, normally they go kind of slowly and you can get everyone to the cemetery. The hearse was going like 70 miles an hour.
That feels very Jim Steinman-like, though, right? Like he would write a song about a hearse going 70 miles an hour in a 25-mile-an-hour zone, and then have Meatloaf or Celine Dion sing it. It just sounds appropriate in its own way.
Well, I just want to add just one little story, is that the first time I saw it, we went through it. It was fun, and I had a great time. I was with just a bunch of friends. Then the same group of people went, and I brought a friend of mine who is very shy with me, and said, "You got to come see this. It's a lot of fun." So we had our group, and then this new friend who hadn't seen it yet. And I said, "Don't worry, you're a Rocky Horror virgin. All they do is just a little, and that's it. And you'll be fine. Don't worry about it. They're going to make you stand up with some others." Well, they said Rocky Horror virgin. So all the friends poked her to stand up. She was the only one. And then the guy playing Meatloaf walked up the aisle to her, grabbed her, hugged her, and laid her down on the ground, and did this whole thing that I can't get into. She didn't talk to me for a week. I'm like, I had no idea they were going to do that. I'm sorry. So here's this really shy, introverted person who, it wasn't such a good thing. She enjoyed the rest of the movie, but she didn't talk to me for a whole week after that. Whoops. So you never know what's going to happen when you go to the midnight showing a Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Well, I wanted to say a little bit too, actually, Heather. It's not always, people react to it in strange ways. Mm-hmm. I was fine for a couple of years. I was tired of Willy Wonka, and I wanted another character to my repertoire, and I effectively did Dr. Frank. But in about 2015, 2016, there was a whole major shift. And I recall, I'm not going to get political, but I recall people coming up from Orange County, which is a lot more conservative. and they would yell at me with placards, and they would hit me with signs that read him for president and Jesus and all of these things. And they would yell, "You ain't gonna dress like that," when he is president. So I had to start really protecting myself. And it was the first time I ever actually had to do that. I had to carry pepper mace, and I had to carry a taser. But the funniest thing is, from that reaction to another reaction, was the people who didn't know that Dr. Frankenfurter was a character from a movie. And I would have people, like, for instance, there's a fellow from Belgium who walks up to me. I was outside of the Hard Rock Cafe. And this fellow walks up to me, and he leans over and he says, "I like your transvestitism." I said, "Thank you." He says, "I'm a transvestite too, but I live in Belgium in a very small village, and my family, they're inside, but I don't tell anyone that I'm a transvestite." And I went, "Okay, good. Thank you for confiding in me. Thank you."
I will say two things that are kind of negative about this movie. And Courtney brought up the first one. I think that one of the things about Rocky that I love about it is that people, grab it and then they kind of reinvent it for themselves. You see that with the stage plays. But this was a musical long before it was a movie. And I think one of the problems with the movie is that it kind of like captures it in time. So people aren't used to hearing alternative versions of the song sung by other people, which I think is kind of a shame. People who really love Rocky Horror, though, like, I'm listening to the 1985 show right now, right? And they have like all of these cast recordings and stuff. And to me, that's really fun because it's great to hear other people reinterpret this stuff, which I think is what Rocky Horror is about. And the second bad thing I'm going to say about this movie, and I still love you, Richard-Lael, is I think it putters out towards the end. Like, after Meatloaf like dies, like the energy in the film sort of drains.
It does.
It really does. And it always kind of made me sad, that there's so much like the opening first 40 minutes are like so electric and so powerful.
And then there are cards for sorrow, cards for pain. And I've seen blue skies through my tears in my eyes.
Like after like Meatloaf and then Touch Me, it's like, I feel like I could just walk out and I feel like I wouldn't miss very much.
And then you get to go home.
I'm not wrong about that. Okay, that makes me feel better. Because it always feels like the last 10 minutes of the movie take 30 minutes. It just crawls so slow.
I was actually surprised when I was watching it because I'll be real honest, and this shouldn't come as a surprise. A lot of movies that we watch for this show, I'm checking. I'm hitting the remote button so I can see how far the bar is. And usually I'm checking at like 5 minutes in. I'm like, wow, it's only been 5 minutes. Great. And this one, when I checked the first time, it was like 35 minutes in. And I was like, all right, we're doing good. And then I didn't check again until the end. It was like probably about 10, 12 minutes left. And then I think I checked 6 times after that.
The other things that people bring up now that they get upset about with this movie is Dr. Frankenfurter, when he goes into their rooms, essentially is raping those two characters. That's brought up a lot nowadays because some of these things would have passed as not a big deal back in the 1970s for films, at least. And they also bring up the use of the word transsexual, which is not really used anymore in the community, and that becomes offensive to some people. So there's some things in here that just really don't translate directly. What was that, sir?
Translate,
yes. And there's some things that don't work now, just purely as a film. Now, as a theatrical performance, it's a different thing. As a cult film, obviously people aren't rejecting this. And I was reading one discussion where it said, you're going to get upset about the rapes, but he had already killed a person actually had them eat him and a number of things. So there's a lot of wrongdoing on Frankenfurter's part.
He's not a good guy. He's
No,
not
he
a
is
good
not
person.
a good guy.
But he doesn't hide it.
No, it's out there for the world to see. And he has that irresistible charisma, though. Like you hear that voice, you hear those songs, and even after he murders somebody, you still want to be in that bed with him.
Little fun fact: did you know why Tim Curry has that voice? Because as he's British. Tim Curry is actually from England, and he was trying to figure out what voice, when it was the stage show, he was trying to figure out what voice to use for Dr. Frankenfurter. And originally he thought, oh, I will be German. But he thought, no, it's really hard, and it's really not going to work. And he was trying to figure out what voice to use. And he gets on the bus, and these two little old ladies in London, one says, are you going to town today? And the other one says, oh, no, I'm going to stick around. And he went, oh, that's it. When kicked to the ground. So it was that sort of
a mix of those two ladies' voices. Yeah, that's cool.
Buses are magical.
Buses can be magical.
I've never like sat next to somebody who peed on themselves on a bus. Buses are magical.
Well, I think we have reached a point in the film of tonight's episode. Oh, Jason, you didn't tell us your first time, did you?
We're going to do that in the minute. It's being saved for the, the Mankey 8 minutes or whatever it will be tonight. It's being saved.
That sounds fabulous. And Courtney doesn't have a lot of quotes tonight, but there is one in particular that I know Courtney is dying to say.
So come up to the lab and see what's on the slab. I see you shiver with anticipation.
Say it! Say it!
Patient.
Very good, Miss Courtney.
I'm no Richard-Lael, but
no, it was very good.
Patient.
Oh, I have another little story to tell you about Dr. Frankenfurter and me being the role. So I was being a little bit dirty, I have to admit. And not necessarily in a bad way, but I was
never in a bad way.
I had been out performing as Dr. Frank, and then I went into this little restaurant where these two young Mormon boys, they were probably 18 or 19 years old. One is sitting like trying to convince me that I need more men in my life. Yes. And the other one,
you couldn't see my eyes rolling because of my costume, but they were.
The other one was so funny because I could tell that I was making him question his morality. And so I as I left, I went, oh, thank you, boys. It was such a pleasure to get to know you. Hopefully you'll get to know me a little better when you see me around. I loved it. It was so good. All right. Well, Mr. Mankey, why don't we go to your movie minute?
All right. So this is a kind of a long story, and you'll get it, but I don't want to tell you the year of the story because I'm a very old person. But it was back in a magical time before cell phones, Ubers, streaming television, microwave popcorn, and possibly even the wheel. Yes, This story comes from the long, long ago, an age before social media, which meant young and dumb Jason got away with a lot. You won't find a video of 18-year-old me. No siree. And thank the gods for that. I want to take you on a journey to that bygone era and visit the town of Cape Girardeau, Missouri, home of Southeast Missouri State University. And yes, that's a real school. Back when I was mostly a harmless little freshman. Not only was my freshman year a magical time before electricity, in the fall of that year, I had my first college girlfriend, and her name was Bonnie. And oh, she was Bonnie, a lovely Bonnie lass. And she took my breath away the first moment I saw her. My crush was as big and as wide as the Mississippi River, which of course Cape Girardeau is situated on. Bonnie and I went to the movies, made out, and I was so excited about Bonnie that I even told my grandparents about her via the telegraph machine that was in our college's lobby. What does this have to do with the Rocky Horror Picture Show, you might ask? Well, Bonnie ripped my heart from my chest, metaphorically, of course, and then stomped all over it, again, metaphorically. I'm obviously still alive, at my first ever screening of the Rocky Horror Picture Show, on Halloween night, no less. For it was at Rocky Horror that I found out that my sweet, beautiful Bonnie was now dating someone else and was no longer my girlfriend.
What?
I remember seeing her in the auditorium of the student union, done up rather like Magenta, but with beautiful dark curly hair. She was my angel, but now my angel was sitting next to a guy named Ricky, both a person and a name not worthy of Bonnie's beauty, smile, or wit. I will never forget seeing them there together while I stood, mouth agape, tears welling up in my eyes. Rob, there it is. That's the picture right there. There it is. Look at that handsome young man right there. How could anyone trade that face for a skinny hillbilly with a mullet? It pains me, just like I'm sure all of you are sharing my pain as I tell you my tale of heartache and woe. It would be many years before I was again capable of wading back into the world of the late night double feature show, because all I could ever think about while watching Frankenfurter, Janet, and Brad was my Bonnie, and how she had been lost. And yes, that's why I cry when I hear the time warp. At midnight that evening, I crawled into a van headed to Nebraska for a school trip. Seriously. In a desperate attempt to get over my heartache and pain, my headphones serenaded my ears with Christmas music. Yes, Heather, that is the real reason I listen to holiday music so early in the season, because my heart was broken by a she-devil majoring in elementary education. The only thing that could repair my broken heart that night was the Carol of the Bells. While working on tonight's piece for the Minute, I looked up Bonnie to see where she was now. She's currently on her fourth husband, has 9 kids, and is living at some sort of radical commune in Idaho where she grows potatoes. Life has not been kind to her. And Ricky, the mullet-wearing man who ruined my Halloween and ruined a perfectly good film for me for years, well, he's where he belongs. In jail. Boom. Done.
Wait, I have a question. You didn't clarify something. I have the editor. When exactly did the breakup happen? Did you get to see the movie and it happened after? Was it halfway through, like right when like he kills Eddie, or was it before and you had to leave?
I entered the auditorium and saw them together.
And you never saw the movie then?
I did watch the movie through
All by
tears
yourself?
and pain. I was with some friends.
Heartbroken.
I was with some friends, but it did, it was hard. And I was going on a school trip. Like, we did leave in a van at midnight, like, because the showing was at like 8. And then I had to go pack my bag and get on a van and go to Nebraska, where broken hearts go. But I remember listening to Christmas music, trying to feel better.
Hold on.
Now I have a song in my head.
This is not okay. The roller coaster that you just took us on was like just wild. I will never be able to hear Carol of the Bells again and not burst into tears because my heart is broken for baby Jason.
Yeah.
That is horrific.
And I really had trouble watching this movie for a long time because it reminded me of this girl from my freshman year of college.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, my life is great. Most of you know Ari. or I've seen pictures of her or whatever, and I'm happily married, and Bonnie is raising potatoes and her 9 children in Idaho, which is really not true. And everything is great in my life. But for a long time, that movie was tinged with a lot of sadness for me.
Aww.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna let you know something right now. No one was getting hexed today because I didn't mind the movie, but well, now I have some other information, so someone else's name is going in my jar. No one breaks baby Jason's heart unless it's me.
Do you want to hear like the saddest coda to this story? So it's the spring, and Bonnie asks me to go roller skating with her and her roommate, and I was like, oh, the door was open, and I was like really excited.
Wait
and
a
then
minute.
we get and
After this whole event? Or
after
before?
this, yeah, and like a couple of like 5 months later, right? And and I was like, wow, like this is it, this is my chance, right? And then I find out that like the boyfriend is just out of town for the weekend. Yeah.
A word comes to mind that I would scream in the showing of Rocky Horror Picture Show at midnight. And I'm not going to say it because this is a family show, but
let me guess. Is the word something that is only used in polite society at a dog show?
No, but that's another one.
I was thinking of I assume she's thinking of a word that rhymes with rut.
That's the one.
Yeah, because that's what we yell about Janet. Damn it.
Oh, yes, I guess.
I want to screw.
Well.
Yeah, I'm sorry to bring up the tale of.
I will literally never recover from this episode.
I hope it's funny. I hope it was funny because my life is great, and I listened to the soundtrack all day today, and it didn't make me cry or didn't make me sad. I thought of her for like a tiny second for the first time in maybe 15 years. Life is great. For Jason. Life is
great. That's great. But baby Jason is all I can think about now. And I will never recover from this. You thought it was funny. I literally am going to cry myself to sleep about this story tonight.
Well, I suppose now that we have petered out, I suppose we should, in the end, like Jason said, we sort of drag towards the end. We should now vote. And I want to see if you could vote here in the comments. One's up, one's down. I want to see all of your ones up or down. And for tonight's meeting, I have prepared a toast.
Oh, beautiful.
I have a bone because
to pick
I thought
you.
I thought there was a lot of bones in the movie. Boobs, butts, and bones. So
I have to give it like a little less than a perfect score because of the last 20 minutes. I just can't. Right? Because the last, yeah.
I'm gonna give it wands. I'm giving it wands up for the fact that I know I would love the experience of it. I'm giving Bonnie wands down.
Well, with that, I guess now that we have voted, we have a lot of ones up here in the comment section. We have a couple of things. I know I have some things coming up, but does anyone have anything coming up before we go?
I'm going to be at an event for, it's called Conjuration. It is a witchy magical pop culture conference. It's happening here in Atlanta. It's mid-November, I believe maybe 15th, 16th, and 17th. I'll have a little bit more information on that next week.
Very good. Anybody else?
I'm in Cedar Rapids, Iowa all weekend, this weekend, teaching witchcraft classes. So I'm very excited about that with Ivo Dominguez Jr. at the store Illuminations. If you're in the Midwest, make that journey and come hang out with me.
Miss Courtney Buckley, where do we find you?
In my bed crying myself to sleep. So
Aww.
Or online everywhere. Listen, that was a rough story. At the themes on everything online. I was gonna do some streaming of games this weekend, and I went out and I did crazy fun things instead to try to cheer myself up. and I will probably do the same thing this weekend. So, but keep your eyes peeled because maybe you can join me and scare me and have a good time. But that's it.
Thank you. And I have a couple of things coming up too. Those of you who would like to go to Scotland with me, I have a QR code somewhere up here coming up July of 2025. So there's a QR code right up here. We have limited seating. We want to see that. Also, if you want to come and see me on, you can see me at University of Magicus, where I teach occult and magic arts. I'm teaching normally on Saturday mornings. So if you are in the mood for some magic, I am there. Also, I'm the gentleman psychic. So I give readings here in my home and here in New Orleans and via online, and I do seances here. So anyway, there is only one thing left for all of us to do. It's the one thing that witches
Just take off my shirt and be Rocky.
Oh, Rocky, how? Oh, I guess.
Damn it, Janet.
Next week we have Hellbender next week. I have never seen it, so I'm looking forward to see Hellbender. I know you will be excited to see Hellbender. And now we are all going to laugh and laugh and laugh and cackle. Here we go. Count of 3, 3, 2, 1.